Hi, and welcome to this B News election special. I'm B News Director Rich Hosford, and as we prepare for the April town election, we have invited the candidates for the Board of Selectmen to come in and talk one-on-one. And right now I am joined by current Selectman Chris Hartling. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Rich. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. So what we want to do, first of all, just to get started, is talk about, we're going to look ahead, but right now we're going to look back. Something that in the last term that you just particularly stands out as an accomplishment for you?
Maybe not so much an accomplishment for me single-handedly, but I guess to talk about some of the things that the board has been present for since I've been there. Certainly a time of tremendous growth for the town. If you look, I believe most of 3rd Ave came online since I've been elected, and no way am I taking credit for that, but I would say if I were to look back and circle the single most exciting thing, I guess it would be that, along with a lot of the other growth that we've had in the corporate sector. Millipore moving to town comes to mind. I feel like of the things that jump out at me, it would specifically be a lot of the commercial growth that we've had in town.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of it.
Yeah, well, that's such a huge part of our tax base that our relationship with businesses and that whole commercial sector is really a mutually beneficial thing. So I look at that as something that's just as important as everything else. So.
All right. And now looking ahead to the next year or the next 3 years, what do you see are some of the things facing the town right now that the Board of Selectmen is going to have to, to deal with?
So I think if you follow a lot of what goes on at town meeting, I think going back to some of the growth that we've experienced over recent years and what's coming in the near and not so near future are the need for some attention to be paid to facilities and some of the personnel in town. Facility-wise, we've been talking at town meeting about that Fire Station 2, the one down on Terrace Hall.
Yep.
We really need to take a look at facilities for DPW. Where obviously we're continuing to do some work in the schools. So I think a lot of what you're going to see in the upcoming months and in the upcoming years will be centered around accommodating the growth that has happened and planning for the growth that's coming in terms of you have a town, you have all these amenities, and you have all this stuff, and now you have to find a way to serve or service that stuff, I guess.
Right. So the fire station, DPW, there's been some talk that in the next number of years that there's going to have to be at least a look. Someone has to take a look at the police department.
Yeah.
I keep saying that to all the candidates.
I smile because, like you said, I think that's one of those things. Look, in an ideal situation, I think somebody would wave a magic wand and we would have new buildings everywhere.
Exactly.
But the reality is that taxpayers have to pay for this stuff. So I think it hasn't been, my experience has been, and it continues to be, it's not one of these things where yes, new, no, it's not like you go through and you identify what's worth doing and what's not worth doing. Everything's important, everything's worth doing. I think it's a matter of prioritizing and fitting into a financial schedule that enables us as a town to enjoy a lot of the financial stability that we have while continuing to invest in our infrastructure.
Gotcha. Now, before we go on to some of these more specific topics, I just wanted to get a sense of motivation. Can you just tell quickly just a little bit your professional background and what sort of motivated you to run in the first place, and what makes you motivates you to run for re-election?
Well, I'm one of these people. My motivation to run came out of my participation in town meeting. My participation in town meeting came from a desire to be part of the process of making sure that this continues to be a great place to live and to work. It sounds corny, it sounds like a line, but I grew up in Burlington. I've lived here my entire life. I know what this town was, I know what it is, and I have a strong feeling for what it can be in the future. I think a desire to not just sit back and say, hey, that should be, or I wish, or I'm not one of those people.
Right.
I'm one of those people that I have this desire, much to my benefit or detriment, however you want to look at it, to be involved in the process. I kind of feel a responsibility to keep the line moving, I guess, so to speak. And I want to make a difference in where my kids grow up and, you know, and in the town that I live in. So.
All right, great. All right, a couple of specific things now.
Yeah.
Affordable housing, there's two friendly 40B projects, as they're called, before the Board of Selectmen right now. For those people watching at home, percentage of affordable housing, if it falls below that, developers get a lot more leeway in where and how big they can build. And there's a fear that the town will fall below that 10% mark after the next census. Have you had a chance to take a look at the two proposals? Are you leaning towards one or the other, or does it necessarily have to be limited to one in your mind?
Yeah, so the answer to your last question, without looking at it in detail, because, you know, it's simply not my subcommittee, I don't feel like it necessarily has to be one or the other. I think both of the locations have merit. And I almost feel like, and affordable housing to me is not just, I don't think it's one group of people that are served by affordable housing. I think affordable housing applies to different sectors of our population. So to me, different sectors of the population have interest in being in different areas. And people who might want to be closer to a certain amenity, if you want to call a hospital an amenity or a medical facility an amenity. I think both of the locations offer a lot to different types of people.
Yeah, and I guess we should say the two proposals. One is for the district or New England Executive Park, and the other is for Burlington Center on Corporate Drive.
Yeah.
Both pretty close to Leahy, but the district obviously much more of a in the midst of it development.
It's a commerce-centered, you know, area. I will say that I know both, what would you say, proponents, or both of the organizations that have put forward the proposals certainly have a history of successful dealings and of an ability to have successful partnerships with the town and the people who live here. So I guess that's one thing I would want to point out, that both plans to me have merit, and both plans are put forth by people that, as a town, we're fortunate to have relationships with. So I think that's a good place to start. In the end, I think what makes sense for everybody is most likely what's going to happen, from what I'm being told anyway.
Right, great.
Yeah.
Now, the last few years, you know, we talked about it a little bit, Third Ave and other businesses come down. There's been a lot of expansion in the restaurants, sector of town. Do you think that moving forward, the board should try to work to get even more liquor licenses, sort of to make it easier for even more restaurants to come to town, or are we getting to a point where we have, you know, more than we need, or just the right amount?
Yeah, I almost feel like, so you're talking about you don't want to oversaturate what we have. I guess the way I look at that is, I always feel like, and I feel the same thing with real estate, you wonder, when will we reach the next plateau of how much a house can sell for?
Right.
When you reach the plateau of how many restaurants the town will support, to me, is determined by the market. If people go to these restaurants and eat, and you go in there on a Friday or a Saturday and it's tough to get a table, that would tell me that there's room for more. I think specifically to talk about liquor licenses, I do think that we need to take a look at where some of these liquor licenses might be located. So we've already talked at length about what goes on down Mall Road, what happens on Middlesex Turnpike. I think an area where, what I hear from a lot of people on the street, a lot of people want to see things along Cambridge Street or along Route 3A. And right now, we don't have the ability to grant a liquor license to...
because many in the last batch that were granted from the state were sort of set aside for specific projects.
They were site-specific.
Right.
Yeah, and because we have that, and maybe I shouldn't get too deep into this, but technically the 3A corridor is it's a region, And I think the idea of putting some things or securing the ability to give licenses along that strip mean a couple of different things. I'm of the opinion, I love some of the larger restaurants that we have in town. I also remember, having grown up here, small places such as like the Pie Shop on Middlesex Turnpike, which was a small place that you could take your family, and back then I think you could feed everybody for less than 20 bucks.
Right.
I can't even get lunch for less than 20 bucks now. But having the ability to grant new liquor licenses to a business along, say, that 3A corridor, for example, enables a smaller to medium-sized restaurant to not have to go through the process of trying to purchase a liquor license from somebody else, which is, when you're trying to start a business and keep a business rolling, it's difficult enough.
Right.
To have to set aside, I think the last time liquor licenses were being sold around town, those prices exceeded a couple $100,000. You know. And
Yeah, I've heard, and possibly more.
Yeah.
But they don't need to say, so.
yeah. So why not make it a situation where a smaller to medium-sized family type of a business could start a restaurant, say, in that area? Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time. There is something that I have to ask you about, since it was a big talk.
I know what's
point
coming.
Of, point
Yep,
of
I know what's-
contention,
yeah.
especially on some
Sure.
some social media sites.
Yeah.
There was a proposal by the chairman of the board, Mike Runyon, to going forward discontinue the practice of offering health insurance to elected officials.
Sure.
He didn't want to take away from the ones currently, but going forward, saying no more would this benefit exist. And there was no real discussion at this most recent meeting. The motion wasn't seconded, and so there was no one even talked about it really. It just sort of got shot down. Do you think that was the right way to do it? There were people there to hear what people had to say, or do you think it had already been discussed enough?
I do, Rich. I could say that a lot of time was spent on that. The chairman made a decision on how to handle that night's meeting. I supported that decision then. I feel now that it was the right decision. I think something to keep in mind, we had spent, as a board, we had spent ample time at two separate meetings. At one meeting more than the other. At that meeting, I did clearly state my opinion that I felt at that time, and I still feel very strongly now. I think that is a benefit that we should continue to offer in the interest of keeping good leaders coming into leadership positions in the future. Prior to that night, again, we had discussed the matter at two separate selectmen meetings, one of which we discussed it at length. It was discussed also at length at two separate town meetings.
Right.
And between the two town meetings, between the two selectmen meetings, with all of the material that we as a board received ahead of time, and just to elaborate, we got tons of information on that.
A lot of backup.
From both sides. Yeah, there was more backup, I think, for that one issue than I've received on anything else in the 3 years that I've been on the board. On top of that, the group that told us they were coming to the meeting on Monday also forwarded with their notification that they were coming. They forwarded basically a video, a presentation that they were hoping to show at the meeting that we were all able to watch. The feeling was, and the feeling is, there was not going to be any new information. A lot of time had already been spent on the issue, and it just, the selectmen made a decision to leave it where it was, and I still do support that decision now.
So as we wrap up, we're just about out of time. I just want to give you a camera over here. You can look directly out and speak to the people, tell them why they should come out and support you.
So first of all, again, Rich, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. I guess the message, the short and clear message would be to people that want to get out and vote in our upcoming town election. I would sincerely appreciate one of your votes for selectmen. I've done this for the past 3 years. I've done my homework. I've put a lot of time into being a good selectman. I listen to people. I care. and I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm continuing to learn about how to make decisions and how to continue to help us flourish in this town and to continue to have it be a great place to live. So again, I would appreciate one of your 2 votes, and thank you.
And thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. And just a reminder for everyone at home that the town election is on Saturday, April 9th. Polls will be at the high school in the gymnasium, and they are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'm B News Director Rich Hosford, and thanks for watching.
Thank you, sir.